Hi, this is Lisa Somerville for Divinity Designs. Today I'm here to share with you the release for August 2021. This month we are releasing 1 stamp die duo, 1 stamp set, 5 custom dies, 2 6x6 mixed media stencils, and 1 6x9 paper pad collection. The stamp die duo, Vitamin C. Our stamp die duos contain stamps and dies so that you can easily die cut the images from the stamp set. To die cut the images from the stamp set, simply stamp or heat emboss your image onto cardstock. Center the die over the stamped image, use removable tape to hold that die in place, and then die cut following the directions for your die cutting machine. That'll leave you with a nice stamped die cut image that you can use on your projects. The stamp set, Jesus Saves. The custom dies, basket weave square background, geometric square background. Both of these dies measure 5 by 5. The next 2 die sets are our double stitch squares and squares die set. Both of these die sets have been redesigned to include a larger number of dies in the set. The double stitch squares is now a set of 9 dies. The stitching is around the inside border of the die cut and around the inside negative cutout area to create a frame. The squares die set, a set of 10. Anytime you see 2 shades of purple on the web images or the packaging, that does indicate that you should emboss your dies for best results. Embossing the dies will bring out the detail of the dies. To emboss your dies, you'll use a silicone mat and then follow the directions for your particular die cutting machine. All of these square die sets coordinate with the square card base with layer die set. The square card base with layer die set is a set of 2 dies. You have the base die, which will cut and score for you to create a 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 card. This fits in a 5 1/2 inch square envelope. And then you also have the layering die. The layering die is 5 by 5. Here's the geometric square background, the layering die, and the square card base. The layer panel from the square card base with layer die set fits perfectly behind the geometric square and the basket weave square background. Here's the basket weave square background along with the square card base with layer die set. If you like to add a lot of layers to your cards, you can use the largest square die to add a pop of color between the layer panel and the square card base. Here I have the basket weave square background along with the layer from the square card base, a square die, and then the square card base. And here we have the geometric square background, the layer from the square card base with layer die set, a square die cut, and then the square card base. The 6x9 paper pad collection being released this month is Beautiful Beaches. This 6x9 paper pad collection features 30 designer papers, 5 sheets of each design. And next we have 2 mixed media stencils. These mixed media stencils are 6x6. We have the half circle and water spray. You can use these stencils along with our blending brushes to create beautiful backgrounds for your projects. You can also dry emboss your stencils by following the embossing directions for your die cutting machine. Here's 2 samples where I dry embossed the water spray mixed media stencil on cardstock. There are many different techniques that you can use along with our mixed media stencils. I'm going to share a few of them here with you today. We also have an additional video on our YouTube channel using our blending brushes and mixed media stencils. You can create a heat embossed background using our mixed media stencils and pigment ink or Versamark ink and embossing powder. You can use our mixed media stencils along with ink to create a tone-on-tone look like you see here. I use the same color cardstock and a similar color ink to create this look. Now I have 4 additional samples to share with you using our mixed media stencils and our blending brushes. On these samples, the technique started out the same. I did the technique on different colors of cardstock using the 2 new stencils. This one is done on craft cardstock using the water spray mixed media stencil. This one is done on black cardstock using the half circles mixed media stencil, the half circles mixed media stencil on craft cardstock, and a tone on tone using the half circles mixed media stencil. Now let me show you how easy it is to create those looks using our mixed media stencils and our blending brushes. The craft cardstock panel that I'm using is larger than I actually need for my project, so I can go ahead and tape it down because I'll be die cutting and embossing it later to fit the size of the card that I need. Using our blending brush, I'm going to apply white pigment ink over the stencil onto the craft cardstock. You can do this lightly because if you push down too much, you're going to end up with blobs of white onto your cardstock. Once the white pigment ink has been added over the stencil onto your cardstock, be sure to clean the blending brush with our blending brush tool, mild detergent, and water. Remove the stencil from the cardstock, clean and dry your stencil, and then use a heat gun to dry the pigment ink on the cardstock. Next, place your stencil over the inked background, offsetting your stencil just a little bit. Then we're going to come back in with the blending brushes and ink and add ink over the stencil to create a background similar to this. I'm going to start out in the top corner using the lightest color ink, then working to the darkest color. You can see how nicely those blending brushes blend the ink over the stencil. Once the stencil has been covered with ink using the blending brushes, remove the stencil from the cardstock. And there you have a stenciled background using ink and the blending brushes that looks like the background's been embossed. And here I've used the panel on a finished card. Now you can go ahead and clean that stencil, but I'm going to make another print using the stencils and some water. Here you can see I have a lighter print using the water spray stencil. And here's that print on a finished card. And here's some prints using the half circle mixed media stencil. To make those prints with the leftover ink on your stencil, you can simply spritz your stencil with water and then place ink side down onto the cardstock, or you can lightly spritz the cardstock and then place the stencil ink side down. I'm going to lightly spritz my cardstock, and then I'll place that stencil ink side down onto the spritzed cardstock. You can keep spritzing and smushing onto your cardstock and then dry in between layers using your heat gun. Again, here's that same technique done on black cardstock. And then tone on tone. Now here's that panel I showed you earlier where I dry embossed the water spray mixed media stencil onto cardstock. Place the stencil back over the embossed area of the cardstock, and now I'm going to use ink in the blending brushes to apply ink over the embossed areas of the mixed media stencil. Again, I'm going to be working from light to dark. And then you can remove the stencil from the embossed cardstock. And here you can see the ink added with the blending brush over the embossed area of the stencil. Again, be sure to clean your blending brush with a blending brush cleaner. And then either clean your stencil with water and mild detergent, or spritz the cardstock or stencil with water to create a second print that you can use on your cards. Now on this card, I only wanted a circle area to be stenciled. So to easily do this, I used our circle dies and cut a circle into my cardstock panel. And then I cut the white cardstock the same size. I'm going to adhere those two pieces of cardstock together so that they don't move. Then adhere the stencil over the cardstock. Again, I'm going to use removable tape so that the stencil doesn't shift. And then I'm going to use my blending brushes and ink and apply ink over the stencil. Remove the stencil from the cardstock. Remove your two cardstock panels. Clean your stencil in your blending brush. And now you have a nice circle stenciled onto your cardstock that you can use on your project. Now I'd like to share with you a closer look at the projects that I created using the products available this month along with additional Divinity Designs products. Here's the stencil technique I shared with you in the video. And here's the second print. So instead of cleaning the stencil, I simply spritz the cardstock with water and then press that stencil down to create the print. The stenciled circle that I just shared with you. A square card using the basket weave square background die along with additional Divinity Designs products found in the April 2021 Blessings Box subscription kit along with our Floral Favorites paper pad. Squares, pierced squares, and the square card base, and a diorama card using the Vitamin C Stamp Die Duo set. Our diorama cards fold flat for mailing purposes. For more inspiration using these and additional Divinity Designs products, visit the product pages on our website, visit our samples gallery, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Pinterest and Instagram.